Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1089B, and today's date is September 30th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Perfect Storm is Approaching, and when it hits, it will be devastating. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. Tomorrow I'll be uploading an interview with Martin Armstrong. He is from ArmstrongEconomics.com. If you are on the X22 Report email alert system, I'll send you an email. If not, and you subscribe to YouTube, YouTube should send you an email. If not, you can go to YouTube, just type in X22 Report Spotlight. It should bring you right to the video. Or you can come over to the X22Report.com site, scroll down, look over to your right, you'll see the video there. Or you can go to NewsSentinel.com, same thing, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, and you can play the video there. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, at this point, we realize that Obama vetoed the 9/11 bill, which allowed U.S. citizens to sue Saudi Arabia. Then Congress rejected the veto, and we can see that Saudi Arabia has been talking about retaliation against the United States for doing this, and they might sell their U.S. assets. They might sell their U.S. treasuries. Right now, Saudi Arabia, they came out and they said they rejected the congressional approval of the act that would allow families of victims of the 9/11 attacks to sue Saudi Arabia, claiming it weakens the sovereign immunity of the nation. Russia has also come out and slammed the legislation as undermining international law. And we can see right now that this was set up, this was created so the people would force the administration to do this, because we can see many pieces now are coming into play or are being connected together. Because we have Saudi Arabia that is on the verge of selling U.S. assets, selling treasury bonds. That would be most likely their next move. We also see the wars out in the Middle East, where the petrodollar is threatened. We also see one of the largest banks, Deutsche Bank, is collapsing, which would start off a chain reaction. And the central bankers knew that they can only hold this system together for a certain period of time before something actually started to fall apart. And they knew Deutsche Bank was going to go. I mean, we've been talking about this for quite a while. So they needed to do something, and I believe this is what they did with Saudi Arabia. This way, they can create this instance of, yes, Saudi Arabia started selling assets. They started bringing down the economy. It was because of you, the people. It triggered Deutsche Bank, and we can see right now how this is all going to play into it. And we're going to have to watch this entire situation carefully, because we can see that there's other pieces to the puzzle that are coming in, because we see the petrodollar is under threat right now in the Middle East, and everything is starting to fall apart. It's like a perfect storm. Plus, we have the elections coming up. So this whole thing is going to be a complete mess. And put on top of that, tomorrow is when there's supposed to be the handoff of the internet to the UN. Now, so far, Congress has done nothing. We see there are 4 states that are going to sue to block Obama's internet transition set for tomorrow night, but we'll have to see what happens. Remember, to set up a one world government, it's not that they're setting up a government where they're going to have, the central banker sitting there in a big chair going, I rule all of you. All they need to do is override the governments of each country's laws, and all they need to do is say whatever we say goes. And we can see they're trying to do this with many different pieces. Hand the internet over to the UN. The UN controls many nations, controls the entire internet. Whatever they say goes. Have the TPP, the TTIP signed by all the countries, where they create this corporate court system where the laws of that court system override the government's laws. So you can see how they can set this up under the radar. And this is exactly what they're doing. At the same time, everything's starting to collapse around. Now, the TTIP, the TPP, it looks like that's dead in the water. But remember, just because something is not being pushed through doesn't mean they don't keep trying. Because we can see right now, Canada has their version. It's like the backup plan for the TTIP. And when you're watching this, you can see that the European countries, they might sign that. And they will get their way. And I'm talking about they, the U.S. government, central bankers, the elite, who want this one world government. And for those people who wonder, what the elite actually think of the people, well, there was a new survey of America's unelected governing elites by political scientists at Johns Hopkins University. Federal bureaucrats, think tank leaders, and others that they surveyed think Americans are stupid and should do what they are told. So when people are out there saying, oh, you're a sheep, this is exactly what they want. They want a herd of people. This is what they think of all of us. We're a nuisance. We have to take the herd, thin it out. How do we do that? With war. We need to take away the rights of the herd, because with rights, they won't do what we want. So this is why you see them trying to train the next generation to make them believe they don't have rights. This is why they're continually violating our rights, because they look at us and they say, just another sheep. Move into this direction. Move over here. Do this, do that. This is why they have no problem sending our brothers, our sisters, our cousins, our fathers, our uncles, our aunts to war. They don't care about that. They're never going. No, the sheep fight the wars. We sit back. This is why they're not afraid of wars. This is why they're not worried about this. Now, we mentioned in past reports about Duterte in the Philippines. And we can see relations with the United States and the Philippines, they're starting to break off. And we realize right now that the United States, well, they're going to be starting a propaganda campaign against Duterte because he's not working with the U.S. government. And remember, CIA is running drugs through the Philippines. They want the Philippines on board to go to war with China. And we can see already that out throughout the corporate media, they are using the propaganda at full speed right now. They just opened the floodgates. And they're going to be hitting them hard, because what they're going to do is they're going to demonize him. They're going to make him look like a crazy man. And then they're going to have a regime change, a coup d'etat, where they'll set up an NGO in the country. They will get people together. You'll start seeing riots. You'll start seeing people calling for the resignation of the president. And the U.S. has done this before, and we can already see this has already started in this area, because the United States government central bankers, they need the Philippines. A lot of drugs run through there. Plus, they need it because it encircles China, and they don't want to lose this strategic area. We see the UN is out there condemning the killing of 15 civilians. In Afghanistan, the U.S. used a drone, and the UN said the strike was carried out by an international drone, which only the U.S. operates, and it killed 13 adults, 2 children. And it's very interesting, when the United States kills civilians, it's, oh yeah, we did it. When Assad kills civilians in a bombing run, or Russia might kill civilians in a bombing run, they point that out. They put it all over the corporate media. And all they do is say, look, see, they're killing people, they're killing people. But when the U.S. does it, they don't care. Listen, it is war. We understand that. But when you're hitting people with drones, when you're going after the people who don't want your puppet government in place, that is something completely different. When you're in Syria and you're trying to get rid of the terrorists that are in your country, and you're fighting against terrorists, and terrorists are intertwining into the public, it makes it very difficult. Because we know this is what the United States tells the terrorists to do. So we can see right now that the situation around the world, it is heating up. Things are getting worse. And we see the U.S. right now, they are bringing more military assets to the South China Sea. Ashton Carter says they're going to be modernizing its military capabilities in that region. And they're going to be bringing in the KC-46A tankers, the B-21 bombers, the F-35 Joint Strike Fighters to that area. Of course, they need to contain China. And what they're really doing is they're preparing for this next war. This is going to be World War III. Now, out in Yemen, we realize that Saudi Arabia, they've been hitting the Yemeni public with white phosphorus, cluster bombs, and there was a resolution demanding an independent probe into the Saudi war crimes in Yemen, but it looks like the UN rejected the resolution, and it seems like it has been withdrawn right now. So they're saying they're not going to move ahead with this, with that resolution. They're going to adopt a milder form to appease Saudi Arabia. So most likely the United States stepped in and they pushed this milder form forward. We can see out in Libya, the unity government, they are losing in Libya. This is why the United States is continually bombing in Libya. We see Libya's military leader, Haftar, the commander of the Libyan National Army, loyal to the Tobruk-based House of Representatives. He has requested Russia to end its arm embargo on Libya, to begin supplying weapons, military equipment, so they can use this against the Islamic State. Now remember, the United States government central bankers, they flew the Islamic State in from Syria when Russia came into Syria. We know that Turkey, we know that Saudi Arabia, the U.S. picked up the Islamic State, moved them to Libya, and then all of a sudden we heard that the Islamic State now is in Libya. And they're using the Islamic State there because this is their force to try to get rid of those other governments. And right now we can see those other governments, they are fighting back. They don't want the unity government in Libya. And eventually what's going to happen is we're going to see ground troops move into Libya, move into Lebanon, move into all these countries, because this is the only way the United States government central bankers are going to be able to keep control of the situation. We see the Syrian army right now. They are getting ready to take over the gas fields from the Islamic State, from Al-Qaeda, from al-Nusra. And what's happening in Syria is that Assad is assembling about 10,000 troops for the final assault on Aleppo. This is why you hear all the propaganda coming out of the corporate media and the United States government saying this is barbaric. I can't believe what they're doing in Aleppo, killing no, what they're doing is they're fighting the moderate rebels, the 10,000 or so soldiers, the terrorists that they brought in, the United States government brought in to hold on to Aleppo. This is who they are fighting. And they're using the propaganda to convince everyone that they're being barbaric. No, what's happening is Russia and Syria, they're taking back Aleppo. And the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, the moderate rebels, the terrorist groups, they are losing. And we know the neocons, they don't like this. They don't want to lose this strategic area. Syria is saying that they're ready to cooperate with the UN to provide humanitarian aid to the people in Aleppo. And they're saying there's a problem there because they're trying to deliver humanitarian aid, but militants, the moderate rebels, the terrorist groups, they continually are hampering the efforts to bring in the humanitarian aid. So what did the United States do? Well, the United States flew in and destroyed infrastructure inside of Syria. They destroyed a pair of bridges in the eastern Deir ez-Zor province. And Syria is saying, well, what's going on here? You're destroying our infrastructure here. Well, when they destroyed the bridges, that will impede humanitarian aid deliveries into the area. It would hamper the movement of civilians trying to flee combat areas in the province. And basically, they're separating the areas right now, trying to control the situation. The United States government central bankers, they are desperate. This is why Russia right now realizes that this desperate country, the desperate government, the neocons, they're going to do whatever they have to do to fight back. This is why Russia right now is sending in more bombers to an airbase in Latakia. They're bringing in more Su-24s, Su-34s. We know their aircraft carrier is off the coast of Syria. And we realize right now that the U.S. is getting prepared for war. And the time has come for the United States to make a choice. Continue negotiations with Russia or start a war. And we know that negotiations aren't going well. And we can see they decided to make war right now. Unless something dramatically changes, we are on the path to World War III. So the U.S. is going to be sending a lot more weapons to the terrorist groups, which we have been seeing, manpads, grad rockets, TOWs, javelins. Now, the effect of these weapons, well, they're not going to really help out because Russians, their fixed-wing aircraft fly over 5,000 meters, and they're out of the reach of the manpads. So they're going to have to bring in more advanced weaponry. Once we see more advanced weaponry coming in, we know it's really game on at this point. But we have to look at the situation right now, and we have to realize that the U.S. is going to have a very tough time in Syria because Russia can send more T-90 tanks, and the TOWs don't have any effect on them whatsoever. We know that the U.S., they might try to create a no-fly zone. This is going to be a problem. Now, a safe zone is completely different. A no-fly zone, what they would have to do is they would have to bomb the enemy's air defenses, command and control capabilities. They would have to use heavy jamming and anti-radiation missile strikes. And they would have to achieve all of this with a tactical surprise. They would have to hit the enemy air bases where their planes are on the ground and they can't use the air bases anymore. And if they do this, this phase would last about 48 hours to 10 days. But we have to remember something very important. This is not Libya, Iraq, Lebanon. This is Syria with Russia. Remember, the S-300, the S-400 systems, they're in Syria. The U.S. has never had to operate against them, especially against the Russian version of these type of weapons. Also, Russia, they have very long-range radars. The U.S. has AWACS, which could be used, but the Russians would deploy their anti-AWACS very long-range missiles and hit them out of the sky. Now, we know NATO is bringing in the AWACS plane. So it looks like they're preparing to go all out here, to go with this no-fly zone type of plan. And Russia would deploy their own AWACS, but they would put them in Iranian airspace. And remember, the Iranians, don't they have the S-400 right now? They would protect these AWACS with also MiG-31 BMs, making them very difficult targets. So for the U.S. to do all of this, it would be a complete disaster. It would be war with Russia. Because think about this. Yes, they were able to do this with Libya. They were able to fly in, destroy, their radar system, their air bases with ease. This is something completely different because Russia is already bringing in the equipment. Remember, they also have that electronic jamming equipment, which just brings everything down. So once they use that, this entire no-fly zone is going nowhere, and we've started World War III. Actually, not we. The United States government, central bankers, the crazies in our government started World War III. And we know this is exactly what they wanted. We've been following this for a very long time. We've been watching the military assets being moved all around the world, troops being moved around the world. We've been watching it, recording it, saying it, and here we are once again. Now, will Russia talk them down? Will there be a ceasefire? I don't know at this point, because this has been tried many, many times, and the United States, they can't stick by it. And I think the United States government central bankers, they're running out of options. The system is coming down very, very quickly. We have Deutsche Bank collapsing. The petrodollar is under threat. The 9/11 bill has been passed. And it seems like all of this has come together and things are rapidly falling apart. And as the economy continually breaks apart, deteriorates, collapses, they're going to push this war even harder. So when we hear more advanced weapons coming into Syria, when we hear the propaganda in the corporate media talking about no-fly zones and things like that, we know at this point we are headed for World War III. The system's coming down, and everyone better be prepared. We are running short on time right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.